our life. Come on, tell me that. Yeah. Lean on me when you're not strong. Yeah. You just call on brother when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you'll understand. We all need somebody. Lean on me. Come on, Tommy. Lean on me, yeah, when you're not strong. I'll be your friend, yeah, I'll help you carry on. Oh, it won't be long. I'm gonna need somebody to lean. Lean on, lean on.
Yes, I love it. You are amazing. I started to love jazz music when I was in college. I went to school in New Orleans at Tulane University, and just it's amazing how it's so much like life. The way that when jazz musicians start improvising and they're just responding to each other and just being open to the moment, not knowing sometimes what's going to come next, but just trusting themselves to be able to ride that wave and become a part of it and take control of it for a while. And when I was in college, I did a semester at C program, and I'll never forget when I was on this program, we went to different countries and studied their history and talked to some of their leaders. And I'll never forget going to Russia. And I was 19 years old. This is one of these coming-of-age moments when I was learning the history, and I realized, wait a minute, you're telling me that at some point they decided they were going to take all the property and the money from all these different businesses, and they were going to collectivize all the property and then dole it out to people in different ways. And I thought to myself, you can do that? I didn't know you could do that. Having grown up my whole life in the United States, I thought property is property, business is business. If you own something, it's yours. And all of a sudden, age 19, I realized, my gosh, these are just rules that we've decided and we've agreed on. Any community can agree on, and those rules can change. It blew my mind. And then I remember at another point seeing a national newspaper and reading an article that talked about occupied Palestine. And I thought, occupied Palestine, what are they talking about? And then I realized they were talking about Israel. They never said the word Israel. I thought, can they do that? It's called Israel. They don't get to choose what the name is. And then I realized, well, the media gets to choose how they want to present something. And it was just, I was at that stage in my life where I was opening up to the way the world works, the things that I'd grown up understanding to be truths and the way the world is. All of a sudden I realized it's not. Today I'm watching on Facebook babies being born to people I love in this community, this church, and in my life. And I see these babies and I see their parents holding them, and I realize their whole world is at the length of their parents' arms. And they have no idea that we're going through a pandemic right now, that our economy has gone into a place that they're saying is as bad as the Great Depression, maybe worse. Who knows where it's headed? These children, these babies, they know nothing about the changes that we're going through. This is the world that they're being born into, and by the time they grow up, any changes that come out of this moment, anything that doesn't go back to the way it was, they won't know any different. That's the world that they grew up in, the world that we have just set aside, maybe forever, is going to be stories that they hear about. And it's just so interesting how a baby, I'm thinking my parents, I looked up to them, they were like demigods to me. They knew everything. They could do anything. They could protect me from anything. And it's just interesting how we then grow and we learn a little different. Eventually, we think our parents don't know anything for a while. We go through that phase, and then we just come of age in different ways. We start learning how things work and what kind of control we have or don't have in the world. We go through superstitious stages, like, thinking that I got to wear my lucky socks. I got an A on an exam one time when I was wearing these socks, so I always got to wear these socks or I'm not going to get an A on the exam or whatever it is. And then we realize, okay, maybe that's not how it works. And it's even that way with belief in God and religion. A lot of people have an idea or are taught an idea from the time they're very young that if you do the right things, if you follow the tradition that you've been raised in, God will take care of you. And eventually, people realize that it doesn't quite work that way. And it's just another form of control, another form of thinking, if I do this, then I will be able to control the outcomes of my life. But we go along that way for quite a while until it happens. Something happens. You go to the doctor and they find a spot on the x-ray. Or it happens to a loved one. Or a pandemic. Next thing you know, we're in our homes. Life is like that. We realize eventually the human condition is that we don't control everything. For many of us, as we're getting older and we're taking on more decisions and more power over our own lives, we can set goals, we can achieve the goals, and pretty soon we fool ourselves into thinking that we actually control our lives. And 9 out of 10 decisions that we're trying to make, we achieve them, and then we start thinking, all right, I know what's going to happen, but look at us. We're not one of us is doing what we thought we were going to be doing at this point in the year and at this point in our lives. So what is it that makes the difference? I want to say that by whatever name, I understand, not everybody believes in God or has a concept of God, especially because of so many ways that God's been presented, but some belief about life, about the fact that no matter what happens to us, we will find a way to grow through it, to make something of it, to move into our own sense of wholeness, to open our hearts to life, to say yes, as Barbara said earlier in our prayer. The human condition is that we don't get to choose what happens to us all the time, but we do get to choose how we respond to what happens to us. We don't get to choose, for example, from some of the most mundane things. Like we don't get to choose when someone we live with continues to put dirty dishes and leave them in the sink over and over again, no matter how many times we tell them. Now, I'm not pointing out anything particular to anybody in my own family, but I'm just mentioning that these kinds of things happen in many of our lives. But also, we don't get to choose when somebody calls us a name or a slur or something, some stranger in the park, at the supermarket, in the parking lot. We don't get to choose those things, but we do get to choose how we respond to those things. And it's the same with the ultimate sense of powerlessness. It's the same with when death comes to someone we love, or even our own, when we're facing our own demise. We get to choose how we respond. We get to choose usually how it happens, when it happens, but we do get to choose our response. Let me give an example. Tony was a ferry operator who took cars across the Illinois River every day, starting at 5:30 in the morning. He was quiet. He liked to work with his hands, and he preferred that time in the morning before all the traffic arrived when he was preparing the ferry for the day, and he'd be out on the riverbank all by himself, watching the sun rise, especially in the winter, he'd say, when there was snow along the banks of the river and he could see his breath in the air. There was a peacefulness, there was a calm. His daughters would say, our dad was tender and sensitive, but you didn't know it from his words or what he said. At 64, Tony discovered that he had pancreatic cancer, and the doctor said that he probably had at most 6 months to live. The way his daughter Kim describes it, my dad initially went into a shell. It was as if a glass wall had come up between him and everyone else in his life. Kim says it was as if he were dead before he had died. Something had broken between him and the rest of the world. Until one day, when her dad opened up. In the final few months of his life, Tony told his daughters how much he loved them, but not just with the words, I love you. He described specifically the things that he saw in each of them that he admired, the things that he considered their most unique and precious attributes. He told Kim how he'd always been amazed at her ability to turn a problem into something positive. Like the time that she broke her arm and couldn't play in her high school softball championship game. He watched her cheering the other girls from the sidelines and thought to himself, heck, she didn't have to play the game. She's already a champion in life. And her sister Cheryl, who when she set her mind to learning something, she was tenacious. She'd spend hours, days, until she mastered it, whether it was learning to tie her shoes when she was 5 years old or learning a piece by Chopin on the piano. The point is that their dad had never actually told them these kinds of things before. But even as the circumstances or the circumference of his life was shrinking, he chose to grow larger and to grow deeper in his relationships with others. What gives a person the ability to grow in the face of the human condition, especially the most difficult and painful parts of our condition? It's almost like a disease, right? Someone's got a condition. How's your condition? The human condition can be really difficult. And what is it that allows some people to grow in these moments? It's sometimes it's their disposition, it seems like, but I think often it's belief. Not belief in magic or belief in miracles or belief that God's going to do it for me, as an even trade for my actions, but a belief in the idea that no matter what conditions we find ourselves in, we can choose to grow, and we can choose to heal, and we can choose to open our hearts. So here we are, living through a time that people are saying is like the Great Depression, like a world war. We're in it. We didn't choose it. It wasn't ours to choose. Almost everything, as I said, that we imagined that we'd be doing right now has changed. And we're having to adapt. How are you responding? How's it going? Is the circumference of your life coming in, or are you finding ways to expand? Are you finding ways to expand your heart and to open up? Are you making the most of what you have? Or are you just waiting it out, making excuses, resisting, burying your head in the sand? We did not choose this pandemic, but we can choose how we respond to this pandemic. We did not choose the traumatizing and ingrained systems of racism that we've all been born into. But we can choose how we respond to them now and what we do with them. Choose open-heartedness, no matter what. So when you look back on this time, or your loved ones look back on you in this time, that you'll be proud of what you did and how you responded, that you chose love. Because no matter what we're going through, it's never a mistake to choose love. I love you, and I miss you. Amen.